All right. Welcome in, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Ready when you are.
Awesome. Well, today we're going to be tackling something that, honestly, I think we've all experienced firsthand, whether we really realize it or not. It's this whole intricate world of classroom management and how teachers actually become so good at navigating, like, all the complexities of it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, when it's done well, you don't even notice it,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly. And I think that's kind of what makes it so interesting. So, you all sent in this article, Classroom Management Scripts, a theoretical model contrasting expert and novice teachers' knowledge and awareness of classroom events. And, it's by Charlotte E. Wolf, Halska Drodska, and Henny Pia-Boschisen.
Great researchers in this field, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, really insightful. And our kind of mission here is to really like extract the core insights into how teachers, especially those with, different levels of experience, how they actually perceive, interpret, and then respond to like all the stuff that happens in a classroom.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to think of classroom management as just, keeping kids quiet and making sure they're in their seats, but it's so much more than that.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
really is about understanding like the mental processes, the thinking that's happening behind the scenes and that, provides a really interesting perspective I think on learning and instruction even for folks who, maybe haven't been in a formal classroom setting for a while.
Right. Exactly.
It applies beyond that.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this kind of research. It like pulls back the curtain on this kind of expertise that often goes unseen.
Yeah,
you
totally.
know and it really makes you appreciate the skill involved. Okay, so the authors, they point out just how like unpredictable a classroom can be.
Right.
Like you can have the best lesson plan in the world, but the moment you're with a group of learners,
Mm.
things can just kind of go off in a million different directions.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Some anticipated, but a lot of them not. And it seems like there's like this real question about how well teacher training actually prepares folks
Mm.
for this constant state of flux.
Yeah, and that's a big point of debate actually.
Yeah.
There's this critique that despite all the effort that goes into teacher training, sometimes it struggles to really equip educators for the sheer range of challenges that they encounter, on a daily basis.
Right.
And a big part of this is just the inherent ambiguity of classroom events.
Okay.
Right? They don't always have these clear beginnings and endings
Right.
or even straightforward meanings, which makes developing, those effective management skills really, really challenging.
I can only imagine. I mean, have you felt that like in your own experience, like
Well,
going in, like you think you're prepared for something, and then the reality is just like,
oh, absolutely. I mean, I think back to my first year of teaching, and I had all these ideas, all these plans. Yeah.
and then I walked into a classroom full of like 35th graders,
Right.
and it was like, whoa, this is not what I expected.
Right.
You know.
It's like the pieces of the puzzle keep changing shape.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces keep moving.
Right, constantly. Yeah. So how do teachers actually like get good at navigating this? Like this
Yeah.
always, changing landscape. So the article introduces this idea of constant event awareness. So what does that actually look like in practice?
So it's really, as it sounds, right? It's this continuous state of being attuned to what's happening.
Okay.
So effective classroom management, it really relies on this ongoing cycle of monitoring, constantly monitoring the environment,
Right.
recognizing, which students, which situations require attention,
Right.
and then knowing, what to do about it.
Right. And the authors, they draw a really useful distinction, I think, between novice teachers, typically those who are in, their pre-service training or their first year of teaching,
Yeah.
and then expert teachers. And here they define expert teachers as those who have at least 10 years of experience, who are recognized for their excellence and who demonstrably, have a positive impact on student learning.
Yeah.
And so our deep dive today is really going to focus on contrasting how these two groups, how they perceive and respond to classroom events.
Okay, fascinating. So that brings us to this concept in the article that I found really interesting. It's classroom management scripts.
Yeah.
So when I first read that, it kind of made me think of, like a theater production,
Uh-huh.
right? What exactly are these scripts in like the context of teaching.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. So think of them as these specific mental frameworks
Okay.
that teachers build up over time through repeated experiences. Right. So these scripts, they contain these common sequences of events
Okay.
that teachers have encountered again and again, along with the actions, that they've taken to achieve their classroom management goals.
Okay.
So they essentially include all the key elements, of a typical classroom scenario. The students involved, where it's happening, the resources, the materials that are present, and how everyone typically interacts.
So it's almost like a mental playbook
Yeah,
of typical classroom situations.
exactly.
Like if this happens, then this is probably going to happen. So then I should do this.
Yeah, exactly. And these scripts, they're incredibly helpful because they allow teachers to quickly understand what's happening in the moment.
Okay.
They can anticipate, potential next steps, and they can really efficiently organize, their memories of similar past situations.
Right.
And what's really interesting is that these scripts, they aren't rigid. They evolve, So when a teacher encounters something that doesn't fit their existing script, they can revise it, they can update it based on that new experience.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So the article breaks down like the basic structure of these scripts. There are three parts: enabling conditions, event representation, and consequences.
Right.
Can we kind of delve into what each of those means?
Yeah, absolutely. So enabling conditions, those are essentially the background factors that make a particular type of event more likely to occur.
Okay.
And these can be, a wide range of things, right? The physical layout of the classroom,
Yeah.
the characteristics of the students, in the class,
Right.
the subject matter being taught, even the specific teaching methods that are being used.
Okay, so it's kind of setting the stage for something to happen.
Exactly. Exactly. It's the context, in which these events unfold.
Right, right.
Then you have the classroom event representation. And that's how the teacher actually perceives and makes sense of what's happening in the classroom,
Okay.
right, at a given moment.
Right.
So it's their interpretation, their understanding of what they're seeing and hearing.
Right, okay. Okay.
And then finally you have consequences.
Okay.
And these are, the immediate outcomes or the potential problems that arise from the event,
Okay.
which then may prompt the teacher to take some kind of action.
Right, okay. So it's kind of like a chain reaction in a way.
Yeah, exactly. It's how, these things kind of play out.
Right. Okay. So figure 2 in the article, it really highlights the differences between, those expert and novice teachers when it comes to these scripts and their decisions about what to do, right? So let's start with enabling conditions.
Okay.
What do novice teachers tend to focus on here compared to more experienced teachers?
So according to this model, novice teachers, they primarily build their understanding of these enabling conditions based on their immediate knowledge of the students in front of them
Okay.
and sort of general expectations around, behavior.
Right, right.
So they might notice, for example, that a student seems restless
Okay.
or that the noise level in the room is increasing.
Right, right.
But expert teachers, they have a much broader and more deeply established knowledge base.
Okay.
Right. So they certainly consider the students, but they also take into account, things like how student learning is being assessed,
Right.
the overall dynamics and interactions within the classroom, the various teaching approaches that are available to them, and different types of recurring situations that they've encountered over the years.
So it's almost like they're looking at like the bigger picture
Yeah,
it-
exactly.
of what's contributing to the current environment.
Exactly. They're not just focused on the immediate, event, but they're thinking about all the factors that might be influencing it.
Okay. So an example, like a novice teacher might see a student, acting out and immediately think, okay, that student is being disruptive. But an expert teacher might kind of step back and consider like, okay, is the lesson engaging for everyone?
Right.
Does the student have the necessary materials? Are there other distractions in the room that I haven't addressed?
Yeah, exactly. And the article actually gives a really good example of this.
Okay.
They say, a lesson that students find boring, a lack of necessary learning materials, and sort of general unchecked distractions in the classroom, these can all create these enabling conditions that might lead to a student, gesturing distractingly.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
And so a novice teacher might might just focus on that distracting gesture,
Okay.
whereas an expert teacher would be considering, those underlying contributing factors.
Yeah. It's a
You
much
know,
more like holistic view.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So moving on to classroom event representation. How do how do expert and novice teachers differ in how they kind of become aware of and
Yeah.
interpret what's actually happening in the classroom?
So the model suggests that novice teachers might not even fully recognize that a particular event is significant or requires their attention,
Okay.
right? And if they do notice something, they often tend to attribute the source of the problem solely to the individual student's behavior,
Okay.
right? So it's kind of like, oh, that student is the problem.
Okay.
Whereas expert teachers, they're generally much more attuned to a wider range of events that are happening, simultaneously.
Okay.
They're also more likely to see these events not as these isolated incidents,
Okay.
but as potentially interconnected parts of a larger pattern.
Right. Okay.
Right. And furthermore, they consider a broader range of potential causes for problems,
Okay.
including the students' level of engagement with the learning material, their behavior, and even the teacher's own role in shaping the situation.
So where a novice teacher might see, that student making that distracting gesture and just label it as like misbehavior.
Right.
An expert teacher might see that same gesture as a possible sign that the student is struggling with the material
Right. Yeah.
or needs a different kind of instruction
Right.
or is reacting to something the teacher themselves has done or not done.
Exactly. Exactly. They're really thinking about, the student's perspective
All right.
and how their actions might be, influenced by factors beyond just their own, personal choices.
Right. It's a much deeper level of interpretation.
Yeah, absolutely. And this fundamental difference in how they understand the situation, it has a really significant impact on how they choose to respond.
Right. Okay. So that leads us to decision to act naturally. So what are the key distinctions between those experts and novices in this really crucial step?
So novice teachers who may be less aware of those subtle cues or the potential consequences of an event, they might simply choose to ignore it,
Okay.
especially if they feel, unsure about how to handle it effectively.
Right.
Or if they do recognize a consequence, their response tends to be reactive.
Okay.
So they address the issue after it has already become a problem.
Right.
But expert teachers with their more developed mental scripts and their ability to recognize patterns early on,
Yeah.
they can often respond to the initial signs of a problem.
Okay.
Right. Those early warning indicators in a predictive and proactive way.
Okay.
So essentially preventing the situation from escalating.
Okay. That makes sense.
Right. And even when they do need to react to consequences, it's often in these familiar types of situations where they have, well-established and effective responses ready.
So a novice teacher might only intervene like when that distracting gesture has already like disrupted the entire class
Yeah.
and learning has come to like a halt.
Right.
But an expert teacher might notice that students' initial restlessness or like a look of confusion
Yeah.
and proactively adjust the lesson or offer individual help before the gesturing even begins.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the power of experience, right? It allows them to anticipate those potential issues and intervene much earlier in the process.
Okay, so now the article includes this figure 3,
Mm.
which goes into a lot more detail about how these classroom management scripts actually influence like a teacher's perception, awareness, cognitive processes, and how they actually represent events in their minds.
Right.
So let's start with knowledge organization.
Mm-hmm.
How does experience shape the way that teachers organize their knowledge about classroom management?
So the model proposes that novice teachers are in this phase of accretion, which essentially means that they're gradually accumulating knowledge and building their repertoire of classroom management script
Yeah.
through each new experience they have.
Right.
But expert teachers, they've already developed very elaborate and interconnected sets of these experience-based scripts.
Okay.
So their knowledge is much more richly structured
Right.
and readily accessible when they need it.
It's like the difference between someone who's like just started building a library
Yeah.
and someone who has like this well-organized and extensive collection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they know where to find, the specific book that they need at any given moment.
Right, exactly, exactly. So as a teacher gains more experience, their understanding of classroom situations becomes more interconnected and easier to draw up on.
Yeah.
So how does this difference in knowledge organization then affect how they perceive what's happening in the classroom?
So research using eye tracking technology, which the article mentions, has revealed some really fascinating differences in how novice and expert teachers visually scan a classroom.
Okay.
So novice teachers tend to exhibit a more continuous, image-driven, and somewhat scattered scanning pattern.
Yeah.
So they might be, looking all around the classroom, but perhaps not focusing on the most relevant cues
Okay.
and potentially lagging behind, the actual flow of events.
Right.
Whereas expert teachers, they demonstrate a more automatic and rapid scanning pattern that is specifically focused on identifying these relevant patterns of cues and events.
Okay.
So they've learned where to direct their attention and what specific things to look for
Right.
that signal important information.
So a novice teacher might be kind of visually overwhelmed by all the activity in the classroom,
Yeah,
while,
exactly.
while an expert teacher's like gaze is almost automatically drawn to the areas and the behaviors that provide like the most meaningful insights into what's happening and what might happen next.
Yeah, it's like they've developed this kind of sixth sense,
Right.
They can just sense where the action is, where the potential problems might arise.
So how does that then translate into like their situational awareness?
So for novice teachers, achieving situational awareness often requires conscious and deliberate monitoring,
Okay.
with their primary focus typically being on observable student behavior.
Okay.
Right. So they're actively trying to keep track of what each student is doing.
Okay.
But expert teachers, because their perception is more efficient and targeted,
Right.
they can engage in more automatic monitoring,
Okay.
and their focus often shifts beyond just that surface level behavior to assessing whether actual learning is taking place.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Right. So they're not just asking, are the students behaving,
Right.
but rather, are the students learning effectively?
That's a really important distinction.
Yeah, absolutely. It's moving from simply maintaining order to actively fostering, a productive learning environment.
Right. Okay. What about motive cognition? Like how they actually process the situation and make immediate decisions in the moment.
So this is where the difference in processing speed and efficiency really becomes apparent.
Okay.
So novice teachers, they often engage in more prolonged analysis
Okay.
and may have a delayed interpretation of events,
Okay.
which can lead to decisions that are more deliberate, but sometimes also more naively intuitive or less effective.
Okay.
Right? So they might need significant time to process what they're observing
Right.
and still not arrive at the most appropriate response.
Right.
Whereas expert teachers, thanks to their well-developed ability for rapid pattern recognition and interpretation, often make very quick, almost instantaneous, and sometimes even visceral decisions.
Wow.
Right? They recognize a familiar pattern, and their appropriate response is often nearly automatic.
It's like a highly skilled athlete reacting instantly to a play
Yeah.
without having to consciously think through every step.
Exactly. It's ingrained through experience.
Right. Okay. So finally, how do these classroom management scripts influence event representation? Like how teachers detect and recognize like important information within the classroom?
So novice teachers often have a more constrained ability to detect relevant information.
Great.
They might miss important cues simply because they haven't yet learned what to look for. And their search for information tends to be more scattered and image driven, what's referred to as bottom-up processing.
Okay.
So they're primarily reacting to whatever visually stands out to them.
Okay.
Whereas expert teachers, they're much faster at detecting the information that is truly relevant.
Yeah.
Their search is more focused and knowledge driven,
Okay.
a process known as top-down processing. So their existing knowledge and understanding of classroom dynamics guides what they pay attention to and how they interpret it.
So an example, like a novice teacher might be overly focused on a student tapping their pen
Yeah.
because it's a noticeable sound,
Right.
but they might completely miss the more significant cues that the student is actually confused
Right.
and hasn't even started working on the assigned task.
Right.
And an expert teacher would likely pick up on those more subtle indicators of struggle much more quickly.
Exactly, exactly. Because their established script for a student who might be struggling, it primes them to look for those specific cues of confusion or lack of progress.
Right. Okay. So the article then goes on to kind of explore some key underlying concepts that are really fundamental to this model. So
Yeah.
things like perception, interpretation, situational awareness,
Mhm.
with itness and professional vision.
Right.
And seems like all of these are kind of interconnected.
Oh, yeah, they definitely are. They all kind of build upon each other.
Okay. Can you kind of walk us through each one of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So perception in this context, it refers to the visual attention
Yep.
that teachers use to recognize what's important and to connect those different events that are happening in the classroom.
Okay.
Interpretation is the process through which teachers analyze and make sense of what they've noticed,
Okay.
drawing upon their teaching goals and their broader understanding of the classroom context. Situational awareness is that real-time comprehension of what's occurring in the classroom.
Okay.
And it blends, their immediate perceptions
Right.
with their memories of past experiences
Right.
to help them predict, how things might develop.
Okay.
And then with solidness is a more encompassing skill that includes both what the teacher sees and hears
Okay.
and how they act to proactively support student learning.
Okay.
And finally, professional vision is that overarching ability to skillfully observe, to notice these key details and make informed sense of these, complex classroom situations.
And it sounds like experience is absolutely central to developing this professional vision.
Definitely.
Right.
Experience really shapes, how teachers direct their attention, how they integrate and respond to various classroom events, what they even notice in the first place,
Wow.
and how they interpret those observations and anticipate, future possibilities.
Right. Right. So it's not just what you know.
Right.
It's also how you see things, how you interpret things.
Yeah, exactly. And the authors emphasize that any single classroom situation can be interpreted in multiple ways.
Okay.
And experienced teachers are far better at discerning what is truly important
Right.
and meaningful in that specific moment.
Okay.
And they effectively combine their understanding of what's happening right now
Yeah.
with their memories of similar situations they've encountered in the past.
Yeah.
What's known as episodic knowledge.
Right. Right.
And they're also much more adept at integrating this with their broader pedagogical knowledge and understanding of teaching principles.
Okay. So they're taking everything they know,
Right.
all their experiences,
Mhm.
and they're applying it to the current situation.
Exactly. And so ultimately, expert teachers are able to see and understand aspects of classroom dynamics that novice teachers simply cannot yet perceive.
Right. Okay. So this leads to this idea of classroom management as perceptive teaching.
Yeah.
So it's not just about reacting to misbehavior after it happens. It's about being able to see the signs early on.
Right.
And proactively preventing problems from even developing.
Exactly. And effective classroom management from this perspective really relies heavily on this proactive and perceptive approach to teaching.
Okay.
Right. So expert teachers, they're focused on understanding the underlying meaning behind classroom events
Okay.
and tend to be more analytical in their approach.
Okay.
Whereas novice teachers often describe classroom events in a more surface level way.
Yep.
with less in-depth analysis.
Okay.
And because expert teachers are better at anticipating those potential issues and making those subtle adjustments to their teaching or the classroom environment, they often focus less on addressing disruptive behavior directly
Right.
and more on the learning consequences of what's happening.
Mhm.
So their primary concern is whether students are actually learning effectively.
Gotcha.
And novice teachers who are still in the process of developing these sophisticated mental strategies, they often attend to a larger number of cues in the classroom
Okay.
because they haven't yet learned to effectively filter out what is most significant.
Right, right. So what are like the practical implications of all of this, for how we train and support new teachers?
Yeah.
How can understanding these key differences between expert and novice teachers inform teacher training and professional development programs?
So the authors argue that gaining a deeper understanding of these expert novice differences is absolutely crucial for informing and improving teacher preparation programs.
Okay.
They suggest that we need to make new teachers much more aware of those subtle enabling conditions
Right.
that can significantly influence classroom dynamics,
Right.
and to really reframe their understanding of classroom management
Okay.
as fundamentally about creating and maintaining an effective learning environment
Okay.
rather than just about controlling student behavior.
Right. Right.
And it's also vital to emphasize the teacher's own agency
Okay.
and their power to proactively shape classroom situations.
Right. Okay. So in terms of practical strategies, the article mentions like the potential of using resources like training videos
Yeah.
that incorporate the perspectives of expert teachers to help novice teachers kind of develop their own skills
Right. Yeah.
in perception and interpretation.
Exactly. So by explicitly highlighting what experienced teachers consider to be the most relevant signals and events in a classroom,
Right.
and by exposing trainees to expert interpretations of those situations, we can potentially accelerate the development of witness
Okay.
and professional vision in new teachers.
Uh,
And this can really improve their ability to perceive what's truly important, to understand the underlying causes of events, and to predict potential outcomes in the classroom.
okay. So to bring it all together, the key takeaway from this deep dive is that expert classroom management is not simply about having a collection of techniques
Right.
to deal with misbehavior. Right?
Yeah.
It's a skill that is deeply rooted in experience,
Yes.
which leads to the development of these sophisticated mental scripts.